Yo, what is going on, Comfy Gang? It's your boy, Comfy NEET. Sorry for the long wait between uploads. I've just been kind of depressed lately because I fucked up my hand while hitting the heavy bag and I haven't been able to do much except watch TV or play phone games with my left hand. So I've been pretty depressed for that reason. But today I wanted to make it up to you guys and talk about something, fairly entertaining, which is the story of how I became a NEET, or not exactly me, but my friend Jonathan. Because I couldn't really say much about myself because my life isn't really that interesting. I'm not a very interesting person and I would never do anything stupid or take any risks in my own personal life. But my friend Jonathan, who is from California and is a person who has parents from Bangladesh, well, he has a more interesting story than me, so I'm going to be telling his story. So this is the story about my my friend Jonathan. My homie Jonathan became a NEET. So a little background on my friend Jonathan. He was actually really into psychedelics, just like me, coincidentally. He had taken them, he had been introduced to them by his friends at UC Santa Barbara. And, he had taken them maybe, I think twice at that time. And he wanted to do them more because the few times he had taken them, maybe 2 or 3 times, he had had a really positive experience, or so he said. And they had been very interesting ones. He thought he had gained a lot of insight into himself, and he thought that he said that it made him go places that he'd never been. I guess he said it made the world appear a lot more vivid to him. I guess I could talk about my own personal experiences with psychedelics and maybe they'll match up with his, but that's for another time. I'm going to be talking about Jonathan because this is Jonathan's story. So, Jonathan, anyways, he really wanted to take them, but because Jonathan was also a spurg, just like me, but he was a spurg and he had no social skills, so he couldn't really take them outside of his his friends providing them to him. So but because he wanted to take them, but he had no social skills, he couldn't get them off of a dealer, even though, because firstly he didn't have the connections, and secondly his friends might have given him a contact, but because he was so spurg-like, he tried contacting the dealer, but he never got contacted back because he must have sounded like a bitch or something. But anyways, so he looked up online how else could he get access to psychedelics, and he ended up researching that you could actually buy these grow kits for psychedelic celery. And this psychedelic celery, he was like, yeah, why don't I try this? Although it was legally dubious, it wasn't outright illegal, or so he thought. So he purchased a psychedelic celery growing kit online, and within a few weeks it arrived at his home. And this was in the summer of his second semester of engineering school at UC Santa Barbara. So, or I don't know what he was taking. He was taking something at UCSB. But anyways, it arrived and his parents asked him what it was because they saw him take it out, and he said, this is my celery growing kit. And they said, wait, is this legal? Is it legal to grow psychedelic celery? And he said, yes, it's not explicitly illegal, so he said. and it's not, it'll be fine because no one will ever find out. That was his main thing. And his parents were kind of, didn't really understand exactly what it was, or so they just kind of went along with it. They kind of believed him, but they were kind of dubious in their minds. But anyway, so he was actually really excited about it, and he did all the prep work. He sterilized the stuff, the soil and the stuff that the celery would spread its roots around and form its structures in, so it could grow. He set up everything. He sterilized his basement bathroom, and he was literally quite OCD about it. He showed me pictures of his setup, and he had like a little heater thing that would always keep the temperature nice and warm for the celery to grow well. And he had like a little light in there to show the celery which direction to grow, but that's beside the point. Anyways, he had his whole setup, and the celery was, growing process was going pretty well. It grew pretty nicely, and several weeks go by, and eventually Jonathan had his first batch of celery, and he was pretty excited about this. So I think he harvested maybe 2 or 3 batches before something quite intense happened. And everything was going pretty well with the celery, and Jonathan, he's getting pretty happy. He even tried some of the celery after preserving it and treating it for oral consumption, and he even had quite a nice time on this psychedelic celery. On the celery, I'll just call it. I don't know why I keep saying both words. On the celery. So, anyways, one day, Jonathan is invited out by his cousins who are visiting for the weekend to hang out with them for a few drinks. And he obliges and goes to his cousin's place, and I guess leaves through the front door or through the garage. I don't know what he told me. I kind of forget. But anyways, he leaves his home and is at his cousin's place. And but however, unbeknownst to him, basically, he is using, his parents had enrolled in a home alarm system that was installed by his very shitty phone company, who always fucked things up. So lo and behold, they also fucked up his home alarm system because I guess for some reason the wind must have been blowing on the door, and it might have been, his front door was closed, but the home alarm system in Jonathan's home, because the door was just slightly open, or so he said, it must have picked up on this fact, and it detected it as the door being open, so it immediately sounded the alarm. But because Jonathan wasn't home, he was away, and he didn't have the phone app on him, he had no idea of this. So anyways, what happened though was that the phone company was alerted, and the company that installed it then informed the police, because they have to check to make sure that there's no intruders. This is standard procedure. So because of this, the police actually went to Jonathan's home, and as standard procedure dictates, they searched his entire house to check for intruders, to check for anything stolen, to check for signs of entry. And they checked everywhere, including the basement. And lo and behold, what did they find in Jonathan's basement bathroom? I don't know why. Well, I guess you would search in case someone was hiding there, but what they found Jonathan's celery kit with literal, maybe almost 100 stalks of celery, because he showed me pictures, obviously, growing out of it, with little celery buds, and the whole setup was there. And obviously the police were kind of sussed out by Jonathan's little setup. But because they didn't have a warrant, to actually search for illegal celery growing kits, they decided to call Jonathan's mom and press her for an admission, or at least that's what he suspected they were doing. So anyways, they called her and immediately started asking her in a very stern voice, "Hey, Jonathan's mom, what is this, blah, 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 like, what is this here?" And Jonathan's mom freaked out, but was freaking out inside, but she managed to stay calm. And she told them that the celery growing kit was actually medicinal celery for Chinese cooking. And well, because the police, didn't have a warrant, they didn't have a motive or anything, they had to take Jonathan's mom's words at face value. So, crisis temporarily averted, the police left, and they left. But Jonathan's mom, not knowing, and I guess Jonathan himself not knowing the legality of the situation, Jonathan's mom called Jonathan in a panic and started breaking down in tears, crying and screaming with anger, telling Jonathan to immediately, she was like, "Jonathan, like, what have you done, Jonathan? What have you done?" I'm just trying to imitate the way he was saying it to me. "What have you done? Your life is over, Jonathan. Do you know that the police just came to our house and searched and found your celery growing kit?" And Jonathan, upon hearing this, he was in a walk with his cousins at a local park. His heart immediately sank to the bottom of his fucking chest, probably ripped through his esophagus into his stomach because of how far it sank. And he almost had a goddamn panic attack and started freaking the fuck out, and was basically on the verge of hyperventilating, on the verge of, having a mental breakdown, because, his ass thought he was going to end up in jail because, nobody really knew any better at the time, right? That was a very real possibility. So Jonathan, upon hearing this, he goes back to his he tells his cousins what happened, and they all go back to his place, and he's extremely to his cousin's place, and he's extremely pensive. And during this time, he's quite literally searching up, things like how to survive prison life, how to build a shank in prison, how to barter with goods, how to, deal with bullies, how to street fight, how to not get raped in prison, safest prisons to live in, to go to in California, how to appeal for a better prison, and all this crap, because Jonathan literally thinks he's gonna get fucked in prison up the asshole when he drops his soap, because, he doesn't know any better. And, understandably, he's panicked. Eventually, after gathering himself, he actually can't open the front door for whatever reason. I forget the reason why, he told me, but he couldn't open the door. He had to wait for his mom to go back. So he's sitting there for the entire afternoon, just pensive and worrying, thinking his life is over. Everyone's trying to console him, but it's not helping because Jonathan thinks he's fucked. So eventually his mom comes and starts screaming at him in a rage again, freaking out, breaking down. And Jonathan is trying to keep calm, composed, and he tells her, "Okay." Jonathan says, "Okay, Mom, I'm gonna go home right now and I'm gonna dispose of everything." So Jonathan goes home with I think his mom had the keys or something that he needed. So he goes home with his cousin. His mom is too distraught at the time, so she just stays at his cousin's place or relative's place after just having came back from work, and well, Jonathan goes back to his home and, goes to the bathroom. The celery kit is still there, thankfully. He's kind of paranoid that maybe, they had taken some. The police had taken some to sample and test. But anyways, he goes and he starts pulling out celery stalks and puts everything, breaks up the celery roots into little chunks and basically dismantles the entire thing, cuts up the cardboard box with scissors and just shreds everything and puts it into separate plastic bags, and drives around town and throws them into as many dumpsters as possible to disperse the evidence, all the while wearing latex gloves and wearing a mask and a hat to prevent any forensic evidence from getting into the disposed celery or anything of that matter unfortunate happening. And eventually, after everything is done, he comes back and he informs his mom of what has happened. And for a moment, there is a brief moment of respite, a brief moment of, relief, because at least for now, all of the evidence of his celery growing kit has supposedly been disposed of. So at least if they come back, then, maybe there's a better chance of nothing bad happening. Or maybe at least that was the intention of the police calling to scare Jonathan into throwing away his celery growing kit, disposing of it. And so everything is a little bit better, but there's still some doubt in the air because, maybe they might come back with a warrant and it'll still be trouble. Maybe they took photos or whatever. But eventually, whatever. That's beside the point. So you might be wondering, how does this have anything to do with Jonathan becoming a NEET? Well, Jonathan, unbeknownst to him, because he was caught up in the panic, he completely forgets that the day that this happened just happened to be the day that Jonathan was supposed to enroll in courses for his third year of college at UC Santa Barbara. So because of this, he completely missed the allotted time that he was supposed to log in and enroll in courses, because at his school, well, it wasn't UCSB, but it was a similar school in California, obviously. Because he missed his allotted time, because you're basically allotted times, well, he said, where you're supposed to, based on your GPA, he said, based on his GPA, where the earlier you are, the better chances you have of getting into classes. It's a cutthroat school like that. And Jonathan, he missed his course enrollment time, and therefore when he logged on, by the time all this drama was over, it was already almost 11 or 12 at night, or 12 a.m. in the morning. And when he checked what courses were available, he couldn't get it into any courses, because they were all, not only were they all fully booked, but when he checked his waitlist positions, he was so far down the waitlist that if he were to ever try and get into any classes, he would probably have to wait, several months to get in at the best case scenario. But what realistically would have happened in Jonathan is that, the courses were so full that even if people dropped out, there were too many where he would not be able to get into any of his classes that he was eligible to take for his third year. So because of this, he called his heart sank even further into his chest at this point, and he broke the news to his parents. And this time, his dad became upset because his dad was still working in Bangladesh at the time, but when he called and explained the situation, he got pissed off, and his mom was pissed off too, but she was more pissed off about the psychedelic salary. But anyways, he called the school to see what they could do, but they said, unfortunately, Jonathan, we can't do anything because, you know, it would be unfair to all the students who had signed in earlier and got into the classes properly, and we can't really do anything. We advised, these snakes at his school advised him to pay his tuition anyways, just to be on the wait list to see and hope and see if anything happened. But Jonathan, not being a dumbass, well, he is a dumbass, but not being more of a dumbass than he already was, realized that it's better just to not waste the money and just, you know, continue the following year and just take a gap year. So as a result, Jonathan was forced to take his gap year, and this gap year was basically his first year of becoming NEET, and consequently, during this gap year, Jonathan lost a lot of his cognitive abilities and a lot of his academic prowess, because unfortunately, I too can relate, because I took a gap year myself, and I know Jonathan, like me, is one of those people that only had good grades because he was basically, I guess part of the whole system that, you know, basically being prepared to succeed in college. But because he had taken such a long break, he had lost all his academic skills, he had lost his ability to cram study. So by the time he went back and tried again, he basically bombed out and failed, and because he had lost so many brain cells and IQ points from basically Aldaring in his first gap year. And therefore, that, as a consequence of that, Jonathan became a long-term NEET, just like me. Except he has a way more interesting story. My story is considerably less interesting. It just involves me, not being a failure. I'm totally not an interesting story compared to Jonathan. But anyways, that's how Jonathan became a long-term NEET, and that is the story of how Jonathan became a NEET. Not me, my friend Jonathan. So anyways, hope you guys found Jonathan's story interesting. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button if you guys enjoyed this video. And this is Company signing out. Did I already talk about my fucked up hand? Yeah, sorry. That's why I haven't been uploading, and I've honestly been pretty depressed. But anyways, I'm rambling. This is Company signing out.